What up, peeps? And welcome back to What the Fuck is Going On Out There? And I mean that, honestly. I wanted today to talk about how to cope with a changing climate. We're talking everything across the board. We have a political climate, we have sexual orientation, we have racial issues, we have capitalism and justice within the confines of, classism, things like this. We have a lot of issues that we're contending with right now. But each one of those issues is dealt with a little bit differently than it was in the past. If you're under 25, you probably won't know as much what I'm talking about. And that's no offense to anyone being ignorant or dumb, although by definition, I guess, being younger makes you ignorant because you're not aware of all the facts. And that's a difficult barrier to communication between different generations, especially, is that the younger generation often thinks that the older guys are all stuffy and the old okay boomer attitude, not realizing that, of course, a lot of these quote boomers were actually hippies themselves and still are, or, all have many different opinions. They're not all full-blown conservatives, but there is a certain mentality that comes as you get older that is a little bit more conservative-minded without being a conservative politically, if that makes sense. And it does make sense. It's just that we don't see it that way anymore. And that's, so those who are a little bit older, at least in their late 20s to 30s, 40s and up, will remember a time when some of the issues that we thought were important or worth talking about were very mild compared to some of the things, at least the way that we handled it back then. Even big issues, people talked rationally. If you look back at some of the early interviews back in even the 90s and then the 80s and 70s, these were philosophers talking on the news. These were people who were being interviewed were highly intelligent and aware people, but also those who were interviewing them, the Walter Cronkite of the world, they were very intelligent interviewers. They asked the right questions. They were calm, cool, collected, and they listened. And therefore the American public was able to absorb that and say, that's an interesting perspective. Even at a time when, I don't know, a lot of folks think that American was very, conservative and very Christian through the 50s, 60s, 70s. Not necessarily true at all, of course. There was a lot of that, but there's always been an element of independence in this country. People who don't take a side, who don't make extreme claims. And recently, there's been almost a cry for finding fault in the world, in everything. No matter what a person tries to do, no matter who a person is, what they say, if they don't agree with the other person completely, then they're just an enemy, a complete demon. It is almost like we're treating each other like children on the playground. And because of this, there's not as much discourse, there's not as much connection between people who have different opinions. And that makes it very hard to really understand where people are coming from a lot of the time. And so we build this image in our mind of how people think, when it often, very often, is not the correct assessment of how people actually think. It's our perspective of it. And I'm not sure what the fuck to do about it. I mean, I think it's important. Probably one of the most pressing issues of our time. Yeah, we have a lot of problems in the physical world, but those are nothing if we can't deal with our own mental health. If we're going to be triggered and have such thin skin and be so easily set off and debate on topics that are just so menial, and then how are we ever going to deal with the bigger issues? How are we ever even going to get past our own arrogance and, short-sightedness as individuals to even agree with the group for a moment? So, and not just our side, that's the thing. It's not about agreeing with the group that takes our opinions. We can change our mind, and that's okay. But we have to be able to look at things honestly, and I feel like we're not doing that as a society, as a whole. Many people are, but a lot more seem to be even worse than ever before. whether it be politicians or the media or individuals within the country that I live in. So that's my thought on that, and I guess I'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks for listening.